Dan and Janice and Gary. I don't see Ian's hasn't joined us yet. I don't believe, has he?
He was on there, or no, not yet.
Yeah, don't see him yet. And we have a few members of the public, so welcome. So let's have a call to order on the meeting. And let's start with the agenda, and then which would be the approval of the agenda in addition of any late items. Any comments from trustees on the agenda?
Looks good.
Everybody good?
Yep.
So can we have a motion to approve the agenda as is?
So moved.
And a
Second.
Okay, I'll second.
No, Ted seconded.
Oh, did he? Okay, I'm sorry, Ted, I didn't hear or see. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Second item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes from the February 25th regular board meeting, which are attached just below the agenda. Give everybody a chance, just have a quick review and see if there's any questions, concerns.
No, looks good to me. I second the motion to approve, or I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, back to the top again. Reports. So we will now turn this over to Gary Nason for the interim administrator's report. And I presume supplemental report too, Gary?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I'll just do them both at the same time, if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, first of all, my interim administrator's report for the month of, well, since our last meeting. And then I'll talk about the supplemental report on the subdivision bylaw. And what I'll do is I'll pause after briefly discussing the Southern Railway of Vancouver Island invoices. Then I'll talk about the conversion process, give you a bit of an update on that, and then an update on the strategic priorities, and pause at those key sections. On the, I'm not going to read my report, it's fairly lengthy, but I'm assuming you've read it. And basically starting with the Southern Railway of Vancouver Island invoices, I have, thanks to Mary, who provided a little bit of background history in regards to some previous legal advice that was received. I did loop back with the solicitor and just got him to confirm that advice. And they did have some file records of it. And essentially what we're looking at, you'll recall that there's about $5,000 of past invoices dating from 2013 and 19 related to 2 railway line crossing agreements. And they have not been paid. We've paid 2020 and 21, I believe. And I did reconfirm with the lawyer, what's the status of these? Basically, he has advised that in the case of any new railway crossing agreements, if UBID was to enter into any new agreements, the Canadian Transportation Agency has essentially said that fees are not justified. But if there are existing agreements, and in our case, there are 2 in 1994 and 2011, the situation is much less clear. And really, unless you're prepared to renegotiate these agreements or ask that they be renegotiated, we should probably accept them as payable. Now, but clearly, if we're entering into new agreements, there's no requirement for a fee. That's not justified. So really the option is, I have had a discussion with these folks at the railway. they're not prepared to renegotiate the agreements, I believe. So really what the lawyer is saying is you could take steps to kind of unilaterally terminate the agreements and forward the matter to the transportation agency, which is the organization to resolve disputes. But essentially, that's an awful lot of time and resources. And I think our position is somewhat less than clear. So really what I'm advising, and I've already said to them that we do not have $5,000 budgeted this year to clear off all of these accumulated invoices. But they're prepared to accept that as long as we're going to make some commitment to pay them back in a future year. So, my advice, the lawyer has made it pretty clear that really, unless you're prepared to renegotiate these agreements, we should probably accept the fees as payable. Mr. Chairman.
I support that and would make a motion in to do just that. Sorry.
I appreciate the comment. I'm interested in Gary's thoughts on whether a motion's actually required, or we just drop it and leave it.
Mr. Chairman, unless instructed otherwise, basically Janice and I have chatted about this, and I've advised the railway that I haven't made a commitment to pay the $5,000. I just said that we clearly weren't in a position financially to pay it this year. So unless instructed otherwise, we'll take steps to bookmark these fees, and they will have to be paid, but certainly not in 2021.
So that would have to then get transferred to CVRD responsibility to pay them in 2022 and budget for them. Okay. Other thoughts, Eve, Ted?
Oh, I'll definitely, the way to go is to pay it off. To turn around and dispute it or renegotiate would probably end up costing more money. Just as simple to turn around and earmark it to be paid.
Well, I don't think we should pay it, but first of all, there hasn't been a railway operating on the thing for years. So what the hell are we paying it for? But it also, the SRY, that's the, it's not the Island Corridor Foundation. This money.
No, it's not.
It's
No.
an actual railway that doesn't operate and hasn't for years. Anyway, I would just not pay it, but you can outvote me.
Is it not to, just a question, is it not to support the road crossing the railway?
I believe it's to support the utility, our water feed crossing under the railway.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay,
But I mean, the lawyer said that if we had a new crossing went in, we wouldn't have to pay anything, correct?
That's a ruling of the Canadian Transportation Agency. If they wanted to negotiate a new agreement with us, then we would not be required to pay a fee. But pre-existing agreements previous to that ruling, really, unless we're prepared to cancel them and force a renegotiation and send it to the TCA to resolve the dispute, really, they should be payable.
can we
I have-
pay it and then cancel the agreement after we paid it?
Yes, I suppose we could. I don't know. I mean, I agree with you that there hasn't been a railway there for years. I don't know what the prospects are anytime soon that there's going to be one, an operating, train. I suppose we could and cancel the agreement. I don't know what the position that SRI would take in that event.
Well, then the ball would be in their court to renegotiate.
That's correct.
And according to what you just told us, the renegotiation would be without a fee. So to me, that makes the most logical sense. Pay it that we owe reluctantly and then cancel and let them renegotiate with us. Like the infrastructure is already there, the work, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just my idea.
Would be interesting to get a legal opinion and first off, look at the agreement as to say what our rights of cancellation are, but rights of termination of the agreement.
It would have to be a unilateral termination of it, yeah. And I don't know what position they would take were we to do that, pay the fee, clear it up, and then terminate the agreement. I don't know, they could come back with some residual argument that you can't do that. It's a, it's a pre-existing agreement. We still need an agreement in that sense, and you still should be paying a fee. Then we'd have to resolve it with the CTA. But it's certainly an option to pay it off.
cancel
And then
it.
cancel the agreement.
If the
Yeah,
agreement
we
allows
don't-
for it, if the agreement allows for it.
Yeah,
There is often a termination clause in these agreements.
Yeah.
and It depends what it says as to whether it's mutual agreement. Each party can do it unilaterally, right? If there's a fee for cancellation, that we have to know what the agreement says.
Well, maybe the lawyer could be asked to let us know what it is, and if there is no cancellation or termination clause, are we held at gunpoint the rest of our lives, or what? I mean,
Yeah, we'll certainly look into that. And, but basically, I'm just, I was kind of hoping that the legal advice would be that, given this TCA ruling, even though we have an agreement which requires a fee, there's no requirement to pay it. It's not that simple. We really, I guess legally, still probably should be paying it, but we have an option, I suppose, to terminate the agreement. So we'll certainly look at that language. But in the meantime, basically, we'll just carry on and bookmark this for required payment in 2022, I guess it would be. It would be the CBRD's responsibility, but we'll certainly look into the language in that agreement.
My
My-
objection against this has always been, and based on my understanding, that these invoices were never delivered to us on time, that they were delivered to us years after they were due. And that while the contract does not specify how long they have to bill us, there's a certain reasonableness that invoices should be promptly delivered. And I don't think they were, according to what Janice has told us as to when they were received. So, that may be more of a non-contractual view, more of a private sector view of what's reasonable here. But if our lawyers are saying we should be paying the fees, I'm on side with that. But I do like Susanna's suggestion of investigating the ability to cancel and force a renegotiation.
Yeah, we can certainly follow up with that.
Susanna?
thank you. Just to follow up on that, I am not in support of, I'm saying pay the fee because it's overdue and our lawyer has advised us that it's payable. I am not in support of continuing to pay a fee when we find out after the fact through a ruling that no fee from this point on should be charged, which is where I came to the conclusion, well, let's just cancel it if we can, and then let them renegotiate a new one without a fee.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's any vote required here of any sort, any motion.
No, not at this
Or-
point in time.
Reviewed it and
If you wanted me, if you wanted to pay the fee this year, I would be asking for a motion, but it's not budgeted for, so.
Yeah.
And they seem to have accepted the fact that, we're not going to pay that 5,000 this year.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary, for,
Thank you.
back to you, Gary.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just section 2 of my report is an update on the conversion process. There is a meeting next Wednesday, I believe, of the full working group. So I'm sure further
Tuesday, I
update-
believe.
Is it
Tuesday.
Tuesday? Further updates will be forthcoming, but just to hit the high points, conversion certainly is in full swing right now. I've basically broken down each of the major areas. Human resources, we're working on a draft, what they call a merger agreement, which basically it would be between CVRD, UBID, and CUPE, covering the two bargaining units. And a point to note, the CVRD has committed to offering employment to unionized staff in UBID under the terms and conditions of their collective agreement. Now, the plan is in later April for the CVRD HR to present an offer letter to each of the UBID unionized employees, basically setting out, here's what your job would be. Here's your rate of pay. Here's your title. Here's where you'd work. Here's your responsibilities. And what they're doing now is they're position mapping. They're looking at each of the UBID positions, and they're looking at where they would fit into the CVRD collective agreement. To that end, there's going to be a Zoom meeting on next Tuesday, I believe, the 24th, hosted by CVRD, with the union there, for UBID staff, for CRD representatives to present, to go over the merger agreement and to answer any questions. So that's set up for March 24th in the afternoon. Communications, new conversion newsletter has recently been prepared. It's up on the website. The chair's done his landowners update, and that is going to be going, if it hasn't already, out with the utility bills. One side would be the landowners update. One side would be the conversion newsletter. As I say, the newsletter is up on the website along with a new conversion video. And both of the CVRD and the UBID websites reflect the same information. So in other words, we're both up to date with the same information. Legislative services, yesterday, a large number of non-active, primarily non-active records, UBID records, were taken from the admin office and from the water treatment plant. They've been located to a secure storage at the Comox Valley Aquatic Center. And the plan is that on April 9th, staff from CVRD and UBID, and I'm going to come up for that, will go to the Aquatic Center to sort and organize the records to basically determine which records could be legally and permissibly destroyed and which records should be retained and digitized. So that was just yesterday that happened. It was quite successful, I understand. Thanks to Janice and to Dan and to Lindsay for being there to facilitate that process. Also, the CVRD, although it has yet to be confirmed, the CVRD, I think is thinking very seriously about letting the lease for the current administration building expire on June 30th, which it does, and basically not renewing that lease on a month-to-month basis. But that's to be confirmed. Internally, they're talking to their finance people in terms of whether that would work or not. And obviously that it has implications for, where a Lindsay or a Janice, if they stay on with the CVRD, would be working. But that's the way it seems to be going at this point in time. Lost my page here. Water. We are in discussions. I've talked about doing some asset management work and starting to develop a bit more of a longer term capital plan. A key to that would obviously to be getting a better handle on the water supply and capacity requirements and current capacity at the plant and the state of our distribution system. What we're talking about, and more to follow on this, is a possible proposed joint cost-shared CVRD UBID water master planning study. Really two parts to it. One part would be to look at the current capacity of the plant based on, what's up there now and current water flows. The second part would be to look more at the distribution system and the the impact on the water system and the requirements given some major applications which are sitting out there, Union Bay Estates, Upper Island Developments, those types of things. There's a bit of conversion money I understand is available that this work could potentially be funded with, or at least some of it. But the CVRD has approached me about would UBID be prepared to put in some dollars towards this planning work, which of course is very, very UBID specific, right? This isn't all CVRD, it's UBID specific. So I've been talking to Janice about, what available funds might we be able to pony up if this comes to fruition, which I think it will. And I bring that back to the board, obviously, before we would commit any financial resources to that. Fire, CVRD, HR, and fire have been or will be reaching out to our fire staff, or certainly the chief, about conversion of the UBID fire operations and paid personnel to the CVRD. Okay, so that is forthcoming. And then communications with the ministry. I've had multiple communications with the ministry about the order in council, the subdivision bylaw, a couple of other things. The order in council to officially dissolve UBID will be going to cabinet on March 31st. And the OIC will be available for the AGM in April. And among other things, the OIC is going to say that, and it will say a number of things, but among other things, it's going to say that effective April 22nd, UBID will have 3 trustees, will be permitted to operate with 3 trustees. And the other thing it's going to say, which I'll get into this when I talk about the subdivision bylaw, is that any resolutions, enactments, bylaws that are currently in effect in UBID would carry on. They would now be, I guess, owned by the CVRD, but they are not repealed. They're not dead. They would carry on until such time as the CVRD otherwise amends or changes those bylaws or motions or policies. Okay. So I'll stop there. That's basically where we're at with conversion. There's a meeting, as I say, of the full working group, and I'm sure they'll be getting into some of these issues at that meeting. Mr. Chairman.
Comments from trustees, please. Questions? Eve?
What would happen to Lindsay if if March 30th? Can she work from home?
Well, my understanding of the process is that on next week, the CVRD HR is having this Zoom meeting and have invited all of the unionized UBID staff, but that and they're going to go through the terms of a merger agreement. But my understanding in terms of individuals is that towards the end of April, each of the unionized UBID staff are going to be approached by CVRD and said, and offered employment with the CVRD and saying, okay, here's your position, here's where you're going to work, here's what you're going to be doing. In Lindsay's case, and again, it's premature, these are just discussions, but if the lease is not going to be renewed, the CVRD would have to tell her, are you going to be working from home or are you going to be coming up to the CVRD office to work?
That's as of June 30th, not March 31st.
Yeah, June 30th.
But the lease ends in March 30th or 31st. So is that what I understand?
June 30th, Eve.
Oh, June.
Yeah.
Where the UBID office is now doesn't end until June 30th.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
How convenient.
I thought it was March. Sorry.
Ted, any comments?
No, I guess they'll get their job descriptions and know better by then. But they'll have to set up housekeeping at the CVRD, I guess, for Lindsay and whoever else is still in operation. And I guess that's just something that will evolve by that time.
Well, I think that the takeaway for me is that, you know, the CVRD is on record, and they'll talk about this next week with the staff, is that they are prepared to offer employment to carry over all of the UBID staff to the CVRD.
Good.
One more question about water, the money. What, do you know what category of the budget that this money would come from?
Well, I was asking Janice that today. I mean, it would probably come out of consulting or legal or something like that. But I was asking Janice today, do we have capacity in our budget to make a financial contribution towards something like that? And we may, but I want to know how much they're looking for us to come up with. But I think it's a really good initiative that CVRD is you know, we're working in tandem on these water supply issues. So they're just looking for a potential financial contribution. At this point in time, you know, we're not sure how much we could come up with and where the source of funding would be. Sometimes you can reallocate if you don't think you're going to be, you need all the legal money that you've budgeted for. Sometimes we can reallocate into another pot.
Susanna, any comments, questions? Okay. The only one I
Muted.
have.
Sorry, Ian, Susanna's muted.
Sorry.
Oh, she's speaking?
Yeah.
Sorry,
I
Susanna,
was-
I thought I saw your head say no.
I did, and then of course I started talking ad nauseum. I just wanted to thank Gary for the report because it was very thorough and all of these issues are quite complex, including the railway crossing. Is there any further info? And if there isn't, that's fine, we move on, about the B parcels.
That's the next section.
That's next.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay.
My only comment is with respect to the OIC and saying of reducing us to 3 trustees. Gary, does that mean that we are 3 and only 3, or can we be more than 3?
No, you're 3 and only 3, but a quorum would be 2.
Great. So we need to talk about this further when we talk about moving the AGM because it affects Ted's term. So let's
Moving
just-
the AGM?
Yeah, so it's an agenda item. So
Oh.
when we get there, let's just remember to do that because usually a trustee's term expires at the AGM.
Right.
Okay, so that's the only comment I had. Over back to you, Gary, for this next section.
Okay, next section, just updates, and I'm going to do this at every meeting, just give you an update on the strategic priorities, the 5 or 6 that came out of the strat planning session. B parcels. So thanks to Janice and Lindsay, who have done, you know, a reasonable amount of work on this, because it was my understanding a bit of an exercise pulling, and to Dan as well, who's been involved in this. It's been quite an exercise pulling these parcels out of the database and then coming up with addresses. But they have done it. They've come up with a list. I believe there's something in the order of 108 B parcels that fall in that category. And here's the current situation after they've done some analysis on these parcels, that a very significant majority of these, 80 or more, don't have really a sufficient address. You know, the address is like Garvin Road, Tipton Road, 4th Street Lot, 1st Street. There's not a specific address in upwards of 80 of these parcels, which is problematic because we can't then identify these specific properties, and you know, they're not assigned addresses until typically they're developed. And this is a bit problematic for staff's ability in a lot of these cases to satisfactorily confirm in the field the capability of connection but also not only that, but also the features on the property that would, facilitate connection or inhibit connection. So, a lot of these properties don't have anything more than First Street, as I say, 4th Street lot, 3rd Street lot. Upwards of 20 of the properties, and again, upwards of 20 of the properties are listed as either, and I'm reading here, Crown Provincial, CVRD, TELUS, BC Tel, Island Corridor Foundation, UBID, Crown Federal, Crown Provincial, Ministry of Transportation. So, whether or not they're taxable, that introduces taxation questions, whether they're taxable or they be eligible for grants in lieu. So having said that, at the end of the day, we've identified, I think, 22 properties. Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, something like 22 properties that could potentially be pursued for further investigation. And, we'd have to talk to legal counsel about steps to be taken to bring them onto the tax roll. Interestingly enough, I think 3 or 4 of these 22 properties are already being serviced with water. So that means to us that we have a double account here, that they're being serviced with water, they're paying for it, but somehow they haven't been taken off the B parcel list. So again, at the end of the day, I think, we're probably looking at 10 to 15 properties that could potentially be eligible to be added to the tax roll, that Dan can say, conclusively, yes, there's a line, or it's capable of being connected, and the features of the property, it's clearly benefiting because it's a legal parcel and we know where it is. So that's where we're at. You can do the math in terms of how much revenue we would be deriving from that. My recommendation at this point in time is, we spent quite a bit of time on this actually, is that I want to focus on the audit. We've got to get the audit completed. It's critical this year that it be done on time. It's critical that it make it to the AGM in April. According to the letters patent, the audit is being scheduled. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We need to get it finished, and I want to focus on the audit and the efforts that are being made on the other strategic priorities. This is something we could revisit, I guess, after completion of the AGM, and see whether we want to pursue it. But there's still multiple steps that would be required, and I guess this is why it's never been done before. Is where we'd have to go now is really, take a good hard look at these 15 or so properties, have some consultation with the lawyer, and then, draft up some sort of a policy to get them on the tax roll and to make sure that there's enforcement mechanisms if we get pushback, which we will. And my view is that this is a bit of a risky file in the sense that if we go down this road, which we could, you're certainly going to get some pushback, and you could have the likelihood of potential that, well, you've added me to the tax roll, but my neighbor 5 doors down has a lot somewhere on this street. Why isn't that person being added? So that's where we're at with the B parcels. I'm not saying just abandon the file completely, but I really want to take a pause on it so that we can focus on the audit at this point in time and get that through to the AGM.
Do you want to pause here for comments?
Comment,
Eve?
question. The 3 or 4, Gary, that we're servicing for with water already, that are still classified as B parcels, are they also being paying the parcel tax?
Janice, I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at that. I think you're looking at, like the United Church, the Community Club, Bylands Timberlands. I think that they are getting water, but somehow they're still on the B parcel list.
Danny, what did you discover when we were looking at those?
Yeah, there he is.
I think what it's coming, like, it's hard, like, what about the church? I mean, obviously they have water. So I don't know why we're not charging them.
Well, and like one was the community hall. Well, there's two
Yeah, there's the
accounts, so
community
they are
hall.
paying on one. So, you know,
Yeah.
there's just some irregularities that,
But I think Eve's question is this, right? Is if they are on the B list and they have water, are they also on the A list? And if they're on the A list, are they paying parcel taxes?
Yeah, that's exactly. Thanks, Ian. And also, in other words, they should be paying parcel taxes.
Yeah.
So, you know, that just want to kind of
Well,
close.
we
that
can-
hole.
Yeah, I think we can certainly confirm those anomalies, and there's several, I think, where they appear to be getting water. We can certainly confirm whether they're paying for it and whether they're having, you know, being charged the parcel tax. That's the easy part.
Yeah, and has any board in the past given exemption to certain bodies like the community club and the church?
Not that I know of.
Can I say something? I've got my hand up. I think I totally agree with the idea of postponing until after the audit is done. I think this is an important file to clean up. If people are exempt from paying taxes, it sounds to me like they are getting water, but they are not paying parcel taxes, because if you're a B, you're not charged parcel tax. So to me, that's a very clear thing that needs to be cleaned up and not dropped after the audit is done. And those that qualify for exemption because they're a church or whatever, they need to go through the proper process of doing it. Part of this conversion is us tidying up our books, so to speak. And I can see how this has transpired over the years, but I don't think there's any harm in proceeding on clearing it up and formalizing it. And yes, exempting those that qualify for exemption because they're tax exempt, but they should be paying parcel taxes if they are getting water, in my opinion. So I don't want to see it dropped is what I think it's worth pursuing.
Thank you. Any further comments on this one?
Yeah, Ian, my comment is I don't think we have the time. The way
No.
time is going, I think it has to be addressed. I agree. But I think it's some of the housekeeping that we're going to have to leave left until later. That's all I can say. It is what it is, and it's probably been going on for years when it comes to these properties.
Yeah, I'm of two minds with it. One is absolutely there's more important or bigger fish to fry, whatever you want to say. My worries is passing on lower quality records to the CBRD and just passing on the issue to a certain extent, right? And certainly the 3 or 4 that we know that are on B, but maybe should be on A, and however that works, that's one thing, right? But there has to be a way of identifying the location of a property, and that, you know, an address having been entered into a system incompletely in the past is now constraining us to these 10 to 15 properties when that list might be double that or triple that. I don't know, right? And if that list was double or triple that, I think we'd be having a different discussion around the impact on taxpayers. You know, right now, if we were to put in 15 new parcel taxes, my math is roughly that each existing parcel taxpayer would pay $7 less if we just proportioned it out. And
Yeah.
that I don't want to trivialize that, but if it was triple that and it was $20 or $25 when you add it up, that might be more meaningful to say we should be doing this, right? But it comes back to poor records. And I know we don't have the time to clean them up, but is it something that we have to, again, as part of conversion, pass an open file off here saying this, it was our desire to do this. We did not have the time.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that we continue to do what we can, but it may be an incomplete file. that we pass along. I suspect it is more than the 10 or 15. I really do. And it's no one's fault. No one's done anything wrong. It's just a function of a growing community over many years. So, sorry.
An increasingly complex system, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not proposing that we abandon the file because I'm kind of interested now because the question that I would want to ask the solicitor, because I've been down this road before, and usually, you know, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th Street, and there's a line in front of the property, case closed, put it on the tax roll, right? But so many of these addresses are just like 4th Street lot. So the question I would want to ask the lawyer is, you know, we can't really identify precisely where this 4th Street lot is, but we have the owner of the property's name. Is this sufficient to put it on the tax roll and be legally defensible if we have pushback? That's, I think, the question that I would want to pursue with Peter Johnson. And that's why I'm saying, I would be saying that, yes, I agree. To me, the first thing we'd want to tackle is those anomalies, you know, the 4 or 5 where there are 8 parcels or they're getting water. Are they paying for it? And, you know, is there a double counting issue going on here? We can clean those ones up. But I would just suggest that we take a pause on this for the moment, see where we're at after the AGM. And, you know, if there's capacity, then let's see what more work we could do to get this list more refined for the CVRD, at the very least.
I'm in favor of that with the proviso that we deal with the anomalies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And other trustees, what's your thoughts on Eve?
Just the 20 properties that are listed as Crown or government, and we're in there. How many properties are you bid on?
I think there's just only a couple.
Can we sell them? Get rid of them? What are they?
Water treatment plant?
Fire hall.
And that, okay.
That's a big one.
I thought maybe there was some little hidden ones we could, you know, sell to build the thing for.
Just a
Danny
couple, I think.
through.
Everybody else okay with this? Leaving it where it is, where Gary's got it? Suzanne, is that your hand up or you?
No,
With your background, your hand kind of, you know, it's
Melts,
half
I
there,
know.
half not sometimes. What a neat trick you do. It's a sleight of hand. Okay, Gary, back to you.
The next item on the report is the subdivision bylaw. Let me just skip by that one for the moment because I'll come back when I talk about my supplementary report. The water treatment plant, separate office, washroom building. This is turning into a bit of a complex file. And there's certainly a lot of history here. And this may be a candidate for a committee of the whole discussion because there's lots of moving parts here. So as you know, we have, I think, 3 quotations for portables. And Dan's obtained those, a couple last year, one most recently from one of the suppliers that was suggested by the Comox Valley Regional District. No, the school district. So we've cast the net a little bit. These quotations are coming back in the order of $87,000 to $96,000, plus a number of other potential things, right? And at the end of the day, I've had chats now with architects, building inspectors from the CVRD. At the end of the day, you know, when you're adding in permits, transportation, installation, foundation, any engineering, we're probably talking at least $125,000, okay, plus taxes, in my opinion. There has been discussion about looking at a build new option, which I've been looking at, and I have had some discussions with the CVRD and with an architect actually. Now, I'm not saying we need to have an architect design, you know, a small little building like this, but I have had discussions with an architect and the CVRD about, you know, could this potentially be a cheaper way to go? And more, not necessarily, you know, as long and dragged out as we may think. The short answer to the question is, and I've got more work to do on this clearly, because I've been focusing on some of these other issues, but in the past week, I've done quite a bit of calling about this. What's coming back is that, yes, the build new option could potentially be cheaper, maybe not substantially cheaper, because of the price of lumber has gone through the roof right now, and you know, contractors are really backed up, and it's really it's not that a competitive market right now, but it could potentially be cheaper. It could potentially be almost as expeditious in terms of timelines and processing, potentially, but a big unknown there. So my concerns about this one are that I have several concerns. One, if we're talking about modular, and I want to do a cost comparison, get to a cost comparison between the build new and the modular. But my concern with the modular anyway is about, okay, so we know the cost of the unit, but there's a bunch of extra costs there that I'm not entirely comfortable we have a total handle on. What are the extras? And in my view, if we were to settle on the modular option, we'd want to do a proper request for quotations, cast the net farther, refine our specs, do a kind of an RFQ process, and go back out to the market, cast the net further, and see what comes back. And because what's come back is a bit of apples and oranges in terms of these quotations, you know, different sizes, and some of them meet the specs a little bit more than others, and those types of things. So that's the portable option. With the build new option, and I'm talking to designers right now, because we don't need to spend $10,000 on an architect to design, you know, a 450 square foot little washroom, lunchroom, change room. I'm talking to designers about what the cost would be to have a design, a proper design done, meet them on site, get a design done after talking to Dan and viewing the site that would meet our needs, get that design done, and then shop it. We need that to be done, to shop it to the local construction companies, shop it around through an RFQ process. So, and I think we need a degree of project oversight. You don't need a general contractor, but you need somebody, whatever option we go, portable or build new, we need to have some sort of proper oversight of the project. So what I'm proposing is, and I would hope to get this very quickly, is what would it cost to have a building designer, and there are a number in Comox and Courtney. What would it cost to have a basic design done? I don't think it would be very expensive, because that's what we need, in my view, to do a request for quotation, shop it around, and see what comes back in terms of what the cost would be for a build new option. And then basically we can make a decision. The other thing we've got to do is we've got to confirm a budget. You know, what's our budget for this? What's our upset budget? I think these costs, if we went portable, would be probably, as I say, 125,000, potentially plus tax. Build new, maybe cheaper. I don't know. But that's basic. You know, I have a pretty good idea on the permitting processes and stuff like this. So that's where I'm proposing to go with this. In a couple of weeks, I should have, you know, an estimate for what it would cost to do a very basic building design by a building designer. That's not an onerous process and not a costly one, but I absolutely believe we have to do that properly and have that in place and do a proper request for quotations so we can get a handle on what is the best route to go. This is one I honestly don't think, I think we can certainly make a decision and start going down a certain road, but I'd be very surprised if we had whatever option we decide to do in place, in the ground and operational by June 30th. I think the CVRD is going to be inheriting at least the tail end of this project. Mr. Chairman.
I'll turn this over to the trustees in a sec, but I'd like a clarifying question. Can we, my understanding of the square footage of this was that it was less than 300 and you used a 450 square foot. What's the dimensions of it?
Well, I think Dan's sketch was about 12 by 36, Dan, I believe. So that's what, 420 square foot? And when I was talking to an architect and the building inspector, yeah, what I think we have in mind is around, you know, 400 to 450 square feet. Dan, is that right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
about right. From the start, it's changed quite a bit, but it seems like when we get a different modular to look at, they're all different dimensions. So we've gone,
Okay.
you know, 20 by 40, 12 by 36, 20 by 44. So it's
Okay.
all over the place a bit.
I had a smaller square footage number in my head, so I was doing cost per square foot numbers in my head. And at one point it calculated that these portables were going to be around $400 a square foot, which was ludicrously high.
I agree.
And at 425 square feet, say 125,000 becomes $295 a square foot, which is still, I don't think it's that unreasonable, you know, especially because it's a smaller structure and costs are going through the roof in the valley right now. Although, you know, as a point of reference, a friend just completed building a small house, a 560 square foot house with definitely higher finishings than we would need. Did some of the labor himself, but he was at $200 a square foot. So I think it is possible to come down below. But anyways, those are my comments just from a square footage and financial point of view. I'm going to go left to right on my screen because I think I've seen all hands up. Ted?
Yes, well, I've been in contact with Kevin and I ordered plywood 6 months ago. I picked it up. And when I picked that plywood up, it was pretty horrendous for 3/4 inch plywood. But since I picked it up and the price now has doubled. Standard piece of plywood today, 3/4 inch, is $75 a sheet per instance. And he says all the dimensional lumber is now climbing up like crazy as well. So I think a portable, depending on its age and size and so on, might be the way to go. Building right now, the costs are just really, really very, very hard to determine because the cost of materials are just jumping every day. He can't turn around and give a person a quote on material anymore like he used to. He says every day that load comes in, we don't know what it's going to be. So it's kind of scary.
Okay. Thank you, Ted. Eve?
I think I'd like to know how big the thing needs to be, first of all. 430 square feet is about the size of my house. That's a pretty big place. For how many people have to be in this office at one time? Like, have you narrowed down? I think we should try and, in other words, build the smallest structure we can that does the job. So, and I'm kind of for building something myself. But the other thing is, the Brian that I gave you the number of, Gary, he had a brand new 12 by 24 modular unit. It was significantly under $90,000. What happened to that? I think somebody said it needed to be much bigger than that. Is that the case?
Well, I did talk to him. Yeah, I think the one that he submitted, or Eve, you sent to me was smaller than we've been looking at. I mean, the sketch that Dan did, I think was 12 by 36. And that one was considerably smaller, but I did follow up with him, and he said he might, I think he told me that he might have one in Princeton, that met our specs, 12 by 36, but I never heard back from him. So,
So it does need to be 430 square feet.
well, you know, that's you know, Dan has done that sketch plan, and based on the number of people there and what we'd need it for, I can certainly confirm that when I chatted to an architect from a local firm that was recommended that we talked to by the school district, he said, yes, 400 to 450 square feet is probably what you would need, because I had shown him Dan's sketch, and he came back and said, yeah, 400 to 450 is what would work.
Okay, well, we're looking at $100,000 to build something, I think. So either way, not going to save us that much money, I guess, but it still would be cheaper, looks like. to build.
Susanna, sorry, Eve.
No, that's okay, thanks.
Susanna, your thoughts?
Just to give you some context, I finished building 450 square foot studio on my garage. So including plumbing, all of what you would need for a washroom, 450 square foot washroom, it cost me 120,000. And that's just within the last 6 months it was completed. So fairly recent costing there. I want to point out versus portables versus build. Portables depreciate in value, just like a truck. A building appreciates in value. So actually my property assessment, which I got just a few weeks ago, went up by 120,000, exactly what I put in to build the studio. It's a reflection of the additional square feet. So I think we need to look at the long-term investment of a property that will actually increase the value of a building, a permanent structure, than something that just will disintegrate literally, as we saw with our old trailer. So thank you, Gary, for the work that you've done. I think I agree with your approach, and I'm very happy, that we're looking at all the options.
If I can add my 2 cents to the end of this conversation, I know I started, but I would be in favor of perhaps a soft approach to the build option. If we know we need approximately 400 to 450 square feet, and we know that we need minimal finishings in terms of the comforts, right? We're not putting in marble countertops, right?
Yeah.
And just basic baseboards and all those
What?
kinds of things. What's a reasonable estimate of a per square foot cost for that building? And if it says it's 200, I say move forward, get a quote. If it says 300, then no, it's a more complicated process. It's harder to manage. Costs are more variable. All those kinds of things. Head down the buy route. But I don't know if it's reasonable, or reasonable is maybe not the right word. If the most appropriate approach right now is to go spend money on designs, it's more about, can we get some rough estimates of per square foot costs for the type of building and size of building that we're talking about, and make a build make sense decision before we spend money on it. like this architect, Gary, may have that idea. A building designer may have that idea.
Yeah,
What does this,
cost.
what's the cost per square foot?
Yeah, and I've had a chat with one architect and he said that, he was the one who said that, it's not, it could potentially come in cheaper than the portable options we've been looking at. And he was the one that kind of confirmed, yeah, based on what I see that Dan has produced, 420, 25 square feet is probably good. I can certainly have, and I'm talking to a couple of designers later this week, tomorrow and Monday. I can certainly have that conversation rather than pulling the trigger to get a design done. But if we're going to do it properly, I tell you, I don't have a totally comfortable feeling in my stomach about, okay, if we went the portable route, how it's $90,000, how much more on top of that are we talking about?
I agree.
I'm not comfortable with that. And I'm also not comfortable about, just kind of shooting from the hip a little bit and trying to get some sort of an order of magnitude cost without some sort of a design being done, right? In terms of what specifically is needed up there after the person comes to the site, looks at what Dan's done, gets a total understanding of what we need. Because that's the best vehicle to have in place so we can shop it around and come back with competitive quotes, right? Before we make a decision. Doesn't necessarily have to take a period of time, but I hear you. I can certainly have a talk with a designer and see whether they're even prepared to sort of speculate on what that order of magnitude cost would be based on what they see.
Just trying to simplify the process. If we only have to go down one of these paths,
I
then
agree
it
with you.
simplifies the process.
Okay.
Are any other comments from trustees, or shall we leave this until our next cycle and Gary's got more information? Gary, do you think you would have more information in time for a committee of the whole meeting?
I understand this is, they're somewhat time sensitive. I'd certainly like to get at least down a certain road. May not be absolutely cutting the ribbon on July 1st. I get that. Let me do a little bit more research and, if I've got something to come back to you with that I feel is sufficient for you to make a decision about which route to go down, let's have a committee of the whole meeting or a special meeting or something like that. Okay.
Okay. How does everybody feel about that?
Good
Yeah,
idea.
sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Procurement of the new fire apparatus. Really, the only update I can give you is the select committee is still working, still meeting to discuss specifications for the new fire apparatus. In fact, last week, it's in the chief's report. I see he's online now, that they received an informational presentation from Fort Garry Fire Trucks. And the only thing that I can report is that my feedback from the CVRD is that they don't take any issue with us doing good planning and trying to figure out what the specifications are we need for the new apparatus. But at this point in time, they would not be comfortable with us actually pulling the trigger on a formal request for proposals pre-conversion. They would want us to hold off on that until after conversion. That's the feedback they've given us.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, any questions on that before I talk about the subdivision bylaw?
Trustees? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I've prepared a separate report on the subdivision bylaw. And I think we've made some pretty good progress here. I've certainly had conversations with legal counsel, with the ministry, and with the CVRD. And here's basically the bottom line. I'm assuming you've had the opportunity to read my report. basically, as you know, the subdivision bylaw was never registered with the inspector. So basically, any bylaws that the subdivision bylaw said it was going to replace and repeal are still in effect, okay? And I'm talking about the 1994 street lighting bylaw, the 2004 subdivision water regulation bylaw, another amendment in 2010, and the subdivision water regulation bylaw in 2011, and the water use and distribution bylaw 226. Those documents, because they were never replaced by the 2016 subdivision bylaw, they're still in effect, okay? And Catherine from the ministry has said that the order in council, among other things, will specifically say that any bylaws which are currently in effect in Union Bay will continue to be in effect and really will just flow over into the CVRD's realm. So that, you know, they'll any bylaws, enactments, those types of things will continue unless they're until they're otherwise repealed by the CVRD. That's what the ministry has said. Legal counsel, they have confirmed that they've confirmed that those bylaws would still be in effect. They're still on the website in terms of active bylaws, so they're still in effect, even though they may not be totally up to date, and there may be some gaps between those bylaws and what the 2016 subdivision bylaw was going to enact and clean up. The ministry's also said, though, that it's not a preferable option from their perspective for us to, reactivate that 2016 subdivision bylaw, clean it up, amend it as per the lawyer's legal advice, and then resubmit it and try to get it approved by the inspector before conversion. Catherine said not preferred and not a viable option because timelines were too close to conversion, and the inspector would seriously question, she said, and I said it in my report, why we're doing this so close to conversion when we're supposed to be winding down operations. And also, if the inspector would not approve it before conversion, and if he approved it after conversion, that he's not going to do that because there's no longer a U-bid, right? So that's not a preferred option. The CVRD, though, has said that they're certainly prepared to work with us. They acknowledge that they don't have a subdivision bylaw at this time covering the entire CVRD area. But what they've said here, and I'll read from my report, while they don't have a subdivision bylaw, the CVRD does have language in its water regulations bylaws which give the authority to the CVRD to require developers to construct to certain standards and pay for certain infrastructure. The CVRD would continue to use similar bylaw language in the case of Union Bay post-conversion. They've noted as well, as I just said, that we have bylaws, 226, for example, the water regulations, water use and distribution bylaw that are still in effect because they were never replaced. So there is coverage there. We're not totally exposed. And the approach that the CVRD is suggesting is that UBID clarify at this time any specific concerns it has with respect to specific developments or development servicing standards. Are there any gaps that we're concerned about that we feel we need to tell them now so that they can perhaps even introduce bylaw language to become effective before July 1st to ensure that, we're not overly exposed? That's the suggested approach that they're asking that I present, and which I agree with. They say, if this suggested approach is of interest to UBID, the CVRD has indicated that it is prepared to explore some regulatory bylaw language which respects UBID's interests, though the extent of that bylaw would likely be fairly general in nature. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm recommending that, firstly, that we communicate with the CVRD any concerns that we have with respect to development servicing standards or proposed or contemplated future developments in Union Bay. And you've been presented reports in the last 3 months with respect to 2 applications. And that could be based on historical knowledge, which I don't have, which may include deliberations conducted at the time of preparation of the 2016 subdivision bylaw. Okay, because some of you were privy maybe to those conversations. Hey, that bylaw was supposed to plug gaps that now they were never plugged because the bylaw was never registered with the inspector. That's my recommendation, first off, and that we not take steps at this time to simply revise and resubmit that subdivision bylaw. And we advise the CVRD that the suggested approach is of interest to us, and we be instructed to proceed accordingly with further information and updates to the board. And this matter likely will come up at the working conversion group meeting next week, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to trustees. Suzanne, and we'll start with you.
First of all, I really appreciate, Gary, the thoroughness of that report. It is truly a really complicated issue. And I'm just going to filter what you've said so that I can ensure that I understood correctly. We're being advised by the ministry that because we are about to convert, we should not update our subdivision bylaw because we're about to convert.
Correct.
So that to me is circular thinking, and it makes no sense. We are trapped now with outdated. There was never any question, Gary, or the board, that we had existing subdivision bylaws. We always knew those were in effect. The old ones, 2004, 2000, we wanted to update them. And what I feel now is, this is just my response to the ministry's response at being surprised that we would want to have updated bylaws. And somehow this seems weird for us to do. They were stalled for 4 years, and I would like to point out that what's missing is in the direction that the board with a lot of committee work went to, the holes, as somebody pointed out, the gaps that the new subdivision bylaw was supposed to fill are contained in that subdivision bylaw itself. Like what the developer would bring to the table. There's a bunch of aspects of it. So I'm thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to work together with the CVRD on it. We share, that to me makes total sense. I don't want, though, for a progress towards updated subdivision bylaw, given we have such massive subdivision about to triple our population, 3,000 homes, that we continue to move forward on that with the CVRD. But I take exception to the ministry being surprised at why we would want to do this. To me, that's responsible governance and ensuring that we are protecting our assets, our water asset, which we're finding out now with a water treatment plant. Our water is very expensive. So I'm really, really glad and relieved, frankly, that the CVRD is willing to work with us on that. And I approve of moving in that direction. Sorry.
Thank you. Ted or Eve?
Regarding 226, it is in place, and I'm glad to say that it is. As far as turning around and changing any of these rules. I'm sure that the CVRD will be looking into this in the future, probably in the very near future, if any changes have to be made. And Susanna, I'm sure that that subject will come up very quickly. I haven't got a problem with it. I think it will come on board all by itself.
Thank you, Ted. Eve?
Well, ugh. I really strongly feel like Susanna, what she said, I totally, am with her there. When I read this, why the U-bit, almost like a note of suspicion from the province that we would actually try and, make sure that little government is working properly and that we have a subdivision bylaw that takes all these 5 different piecemeal things and puts them into a coherent, updated law. That why they'd be surprised about that strikes me as continuing this stalling of the subdivision bylaw. Perhaps they don't know that we're faced with the largest development in this area. So this is really, I'm very, just want to wring someone's neck about it, quite frankly. And the other thing is, I wasn't on the board when they updated this bylaw, so I wouldn't even be qualified to know what the gaps really are if I had to start from square one. And the CVRD's offers little comfort at the end here, likely to be fairly general in nature. I don't know what that means. It sounds like just kind of a slap on the back or, don't bother us. The other thing is just a question. The CVRD, can they instigate bylaws without this order in council thing? Or is that just, can they just make bylaws without the approval of the province? Like we can't?
Yes, they can. Certain bylaws that they enact have to be approved by the province, but the majority of them don't, just like a municipality.
So technically, they could take the subdivision bylaw that was reworked by the old board and make it their own and not have to have approval by order in council? I mean, because if we have to go that way, we can just tell the CVRD that that's what we want.
Well, they could certainly take that bylaw or the essence of that bylaw and work it into a new bylaw under their auspices. I'm not entirely sure if it would require the inspector's approval or not. I don't know, but they could certainly take our bylaws, including that 2016 subdivision bylaw, which they have and which they've reviewed, and basically use that as the basis for updating their bylaws and input into their subdivision bylaw, which they are developing or proposing to develop for the entire CVRD.
Thank you. Eve, is that any more? My thoughts, like I appreciate what both Susanna and Eve are saying in that, the intention here has always been to create clarity around subdivisions. And I understand both halves of the argument. One is that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to pass to CVRD what we want. I also understand the whole timing argument about, will it get approved prior to conversion? And if it doesn't, then what effect does it have if UBID no longer exists? So I think on balance, I appreciate and agree with Gary's recommendations that we try to influence the CVRD bylaw to make sure it covers everything that we need. And that if an interim bylaw can be passed that protects us prior to, or gives us a little bit more than we currently have prior to the creation of a comprehensive CVRD subdivision bylaw, that would be a good thing. I do want to note, though, that our subdivision bylaw would not cover all of the needs of CVRD because we only have 3 services, and they would be considering many more services like parks and those sorts of things that we don't consider. So it may be that we can't just pass them our bylaw and have them use it as theirs.
But maybe a portion of it,
Well, this
like
idea
it melded.
is important, right? To say, okay, so what is it that with respect to the Union Bay service areas that we feel is important to have acknowledged as additional protections, recognizing that, you know, that what is on the table today with the two Union Bay Estates developments and the proposed Upper Island developments rezoning application would be relying on our existing bylaws anyway, and any changes that we made would probably not affect either of those, or any of those three applications. So it would be only about future applications.
Right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I have another piece of advice for you. I think this is a critical issue. I understand that, and I agree that this is an important issue. And I have two suggestions for you. I really do think, and I've given my counterpart a heads up that I believe this issue is going to come up at the working committee meeting next week. I think you should raise it from the political perspective. And express your concerns and your aspirations about where we should move on this. But, you know, that committee is only an hour, that meeting's only an hour long. I would also make the suggestion that this, I think, rather warrants maybe a little subcommittee or a sidebar committee of the working group to meet with CVRD planning with political representation in attendance so that they can hear this from you folks on the board. I do believe that that's the case, because that working group is only scheduled to meet once a month. This is a critical issue. So I would suggest you raise it on Tuesday or whenever the meeting is, and perhaps we consider some sort of a little subgroup to have a sit down meeting and to just talk through these issues and concerns so that they fully understand it.
Love it. And just so happens a member of that working group was part of the board that authored the draft bylaw.
Right.
Yeah,
What does the rest of the board think of that?
sounds good to me. I agree, Gary. Thank you for the suggestion.
That sounds good, but you're called a working group and you only meet once a month? How are you working? I don't, that's a misnomer.
Well, it's the overseeing master group that's dealing with
Yeah.
all of the conversion issues. But basically, most of the work at this point in time is going on at the staff level in the
Yeah,
various
not a
areas,
working-
right?
Not a working group, but okay.
It's an advisory group.
It's an advice.
Yeah. And Gary would probably object to the fact that he's not working.
But Gary's not doing all that in the capacity of the working group. He's our administrator and doing a ton of work. And I thank you, Gary.
And I appreciate, Eve, your desire to do real work. You've been a stalwart representative of let's do real work.
But
So,
I'm not
Mr.
on the
Chair-
committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I think this is one where perhaps a motion is in order, and you know, I have a suggested three-part motion, which is on page 3 of my report. And I can advise the CVRD and we can move forward accordingly, starting at the next meeting on Tuesday.
So if the motion is that the board approves the recommendations made by in the interim administrator's supplemental subdivision bylaw report of March 18th. So is that the motion you would like, Gary?
Yes.
Okay, so motion's on the table. Any second?
Could you
I'll second
repeat
it.
the motion? Oh, sorry.
The motion, to repeat, is that the board approves the recommendations made in section 3 of the interim administrator's supplemental report subdivision bylaw, March 18th, 2021. Any further discussion? Ted says no. Eve? All good? Susanna?
So good.
I'm good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's approved. So I guess we now need to adopt those reports. Oops, now I have to switch back to my other document. So motion to adopt the interim administrator's report and supplemental report.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, I'm just now trying to get back to find the agenda again. There we are. Okay, so next up is the Deputy Administrator's Report. Welcome, Janice.
Hi there. So it's short. I know Gary had mentioned about the audit in a couple of weeks. We're well into it already. We've been on it over a week now. So the whole thing's been done remote, so it's a little time consuming, but you know, that's just what you have to do. We got the water bills out. There was yet another problem with the emailing of bills. It's this program. It's very frustrating, but you know, we have to work with it. The document pickup yesterday, they took a lot of stuff. Sorry, I just have to, there. They didn't just take documents, they took office supplies that we wouldn't be using. They took some equipment, they took the projector and screen, and because they're looking at moving us out. So why not do it when you have the movers there? So it's getting pretty bare in there now. They took 3 filing cabinets out. So, and we just kept giving them more because it's good for us to not have to do it at a different point without movers. You know, it makes sense. That's about it. You know, we're still having to do the COVID thing and meeting via Zoom and email and Teams, and seems to be working well. That's my report.
Now, also attached to your report were financial statements, correct?
Correct.
I don't know about the other trustees. I'm focused on
The last one, yeah.
actual versus budget comparison, the last document that was in Janice's email.
And I have since cleaned it up more because it's an Excel file, so I can resend it because I've got some better actuals for the revenue side. I mean, the total is correct, but I've actually compared each line item now to the annual budget.
So we're well ahead, but we're well ahead because parcel tax is billed at the beginning of the year.
Correct.
If we look at expenses, we're overspending the budget, but I also recognize that there may be some timing issues associated with that. And I'm wondering if you could comment on any timing issues, like when I look at things like
Insurance is a
insurance.
huge one.
Yeah. Wages seem to be out a little bit too.
Pardon?
Like the wages seem to be out a little bit, right? When you look at Public Works wages at $39,000 with a budget at $16,000. And I was wondering about that. Fire department wages is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, this is actual, so I can't answer because it's actual. It's what's actually gone through.
But what I'm getting at is versus budget, right? Like, so
Yeah, no,
public
I
work.
hear what you're saying. You're saying it seems high. But you know, what it will also be is there was a pay period, January 1. So there will be an extra pay period, which in the audit, they will back out and put the expense to the 2020 year.
So one of 3 pay periods would be backed out.
Yes.
which would reduce this by a third, which would mean that we're still over quite a bit.
Right.
And I'd appreciate, like, wages, that's one of the things we should be able to predict fairly easily. So I'd love to hear an explanation as to, what's happening there. Is it simply the budget is understated or something like, is it
Well, I
just
do
a-
know in Public Works, there's been a lot of overtime for all the problems with the pump at the plant. I've pulled together an invoice that we're sending to AWC for those hours.
How much is that invoice?
It's not huge. Yeah, and it's not finalized yet, and there's some other expenses that are going in it. So it's only about $3,000. So it's $2,400 of time we're charging them for. But, there's also the discussion, and Denny and I have had it, even though they, we're just charging for on-call time, they've had to put a lot of time into, like, when they're working to try and fix the problem. So they're not getting charged for that time because they were working anyways. But then it also then pushes back other things that they have to do. And, they've had a massive leak on the highway. Well, Ted knows about it.
Yeah, a huge one.
Yeah. So, there's been a fair bit of overtime that's had to go in.
It'd be nice just to, because this is a fairly large overage between Public Works and Fire Department. I haven't actually looked at the admin wages. Are they separated out, or are admin wages built into, as part of the budget? They're built into the they're allocated out, aren't they?
They get split between fire and
Right.
Public Works.
And included under those wage lines?
Correct.
And but the budget is also split that way, right?
Correct.
So that should just be anyways, if we could have a little bit of a breakdown as to why are we so far over on wages, and, overtime is a valid explanation. A third pay period is a valid explanation, right?
Mhm.
But it'd be nice just to know, is there something else going on or is this just a temporary thing?
If you look at that, when you're looking at the payroll expense for Public Works, you'll notice there's a line that says, it's 100,000 is for the whole year. And there's no actual, because it's the admin, right?
Right.
So that 8,300 is actually in the 3,800.
Okay, so our actual budget isn't 16, it's 25.
Yeah.
Okay, we're very much closer if you back out a pay period then.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that would
okay,
be the
thank you.
same-
That explains it for me.
That would be the same for fire as well.
Yeah, got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Did the other trustees understand that?
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Ian. Thank you very much.
Which attachment in Janice's report are you looking at?
It is entitled Income Statement Actual versus Budget.
I think it was in our email.
Yeah, it was in
Yes, it
Janice's
was.
email, second last file, I think. Maybe it's the last file. But
The last one, okay. Thank you, sorry, I didn't know which one. Okay.
yeah, it's that one. You're looking at the right one if your head's sideways.
Yeah, I didn't print it and it's like illegible, I can't read it. It's been
So, and I can reduce the amount of statements I send to you guys if you want.
No,
Okay, you prefer to get them all? Okay, that works for me.
well, I do. I
Okay,
can't speak for everyone, just because the numbers have been so weird for so long that it's nice to get them on a regular.
yeah.
I appreciate it.
And this one is the revenue and expenses. And the balance sheet is all the assets, liabilities, and equity. So it's good to get a balance sheet and an income statement.
Yeah,
I like the comparison to budget because it lets us have an operational view of how we're doing, whether we're going to come out the other end with a surplus or a deficit, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Janice?
I was just gonna ask one question to Janice regarding the last stuff to move out of the office come the end of the month. Is there very much to be removed? Because I do have an enclosed trailer that can be used if that's necessary.
What they've discussed with us is, I mean, because really, asset wise, there's not a lot of furniture. There's a couple of big sets of metal shelving units, which Danny's taking
Yeah.
out of the plant, and we have some wooden shelving. So we'll see if Danny needs that or the fire department. And then you're looking at one desk. Oh, and a plastic table. Oh, no, there is the conference table. But we were also talking about the counter that was built.
Yeah.
Some of the discussion around it was if we went for the portable office solution, that counter can be moved into that, because that is Union Bay's counter.
Right.
So,
Well,
yeah,
if you need that stuff removed at that particular time, as I say, I have an enclosed trailer that I can bring in and it can be loaded in there and then taken wherever.
yeah, no, that's great.
Free gratis.
I don't know if they're going to do a moving truck again.
Well, it would save that expense if that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we didn't pay it. So,
Well, somebody's got to pay.
Conversion grant.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Ted. So shall we have a motion to adopt the deputy minister's report and financial statements?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Chief Ham, it is your turn for your fire chief's report. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As you can see from the report for February, the call volume was down quite a bit. We responded only to 3 first responder calls. We've already surpassed that this month, but February was really slow for some reason. We're carrying on with our training and everything. We're still observing all the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. We are training in person though, but we are training in smaller groups, and we're utilizing the fire hall, the community hall, and the school and grounds for our training to keep the numbers down. Nothing really new from the just had a Comox Valley Chiefs Association meeting the other day, which was quite informative. BC Wildfire was there giving some information, and the deputy fire commissioner was there as well. So that was some pretty good information for us. We're still working on our conversion stuff, our ROGs, our health and safety, all that kind of stuff for the regional district. So but that's all good. Open fire season, not really a problem yet, although that was part of the stuff from the coastal fire and the wildfire guys was getting ready for that season coming. Our training, like I said, keeps on. We keep training in smaller groups. We had one member complete his emergency scene management level 1, which is a fairly substantial course. So congratulations to him. We had Chief Schreiner from the Comox Fire Service do a Zoom training session for us on scene management and fire ground accountability, which is pretty high up with the work safe and everything like that. So we keep on top of that. We had 4 members complete their Module 3 exams. These are the recruits and part of their training. And there's some in-house pump training going on. In the vehicle section, Duty 26 needed a new tire that was blown right off the rim. It had some oil servicing while it was in there doing that. We've had some service issues with engine 24 and 25 that have been rectified. We got a new company to come down and look at that. So that's working out fairly good. They travel with their mechanic and he does work on site, so we don't have to ship the vehicles anywhere. I guess in the agenda, I guess, is that capital request for our turnout gear. We replaced our reciprocating saw on Rescue 28. It just, it got outdated. We couldn't replace the battery for it anymore. There was no, so it just kind of took it out of service, and it was just as cheap to replace it with a new one than it was to try and get a battery anyway, or rebuild the battery. All our first responder bags have all been updated. We have some new membership. We're actually, well, this report we were at 21. We have one more, so we're at 22 now, which is great. We are experiencing a little bit of a rodent problem in the fire hall. We've tried plugging in some sonic, I don't know what they do. I guess they make a sound that the rats don't like and keeps them away. And we've got some rat spray, some environmentally friendly stuff that's supposed to smell like cedar that they don't like. So we're trying that. I don't know, we may have to step it up and maybe get somebody in, but we'll see how these work. Occupational health and safety, they continue to do their thing and inspect the hall for safety issues and whatnot, and there's been no reports of any injury. February, we had Burn Awareness Week. We posted on our website and everything, the stuff from the fire commissioner for that. And we're always recruiting. So, and it seems to be working. The information's getting out there, and we've had, 3 new members over the last, I don't know, 2 months. So that's pretty good. Yeah. So that's February's slow report, but there it is.
Thank you. Questions for Chief Ham?
Question.
Fire away.
If you perceive someone burning garbage on their property, is there a proper protocol? Is there anything one can do about that?
Yeah, well, call 911 first off, and they'll dispatch our duty officer. Because we don't have any bylaws for enforcement, if the duty officer gets there, finds that they actually are burning stuff that they shouldn't be burning, and they don't put it out immediately, we can call the RAP number, and we do have other numbers we can call too, but that dispatches the environmental guys, and those guys do have the power for enforcement, and they'll start a fine about $500 to start with. So if it's a illegal burning, like if they're burning trash or garbage or whatever, yeah, absolutely call 911.
Great.
And get,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Ted, Susanna, any questions?
One question, Ian. How's your masks holding up?
They're holding up great. Yeah, it's been weird with the even the first responder calls we go on. They haven't popped us into a super lockdown COVID mode. The ambulance gets there fairly quickly, and even those guys are, they just wear a face shield and stuff. So unless they get the alert from their station that it's a COVID, or it happens on scene that it's a COVID issue, but we still have lots of those masks. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Thanks.
Only question I had is this rodent problem at the level of a health problem?
It's getting pretty close to that point. Yeah. We'll see how these sonic, if they back out and the spray helps and keeps them out of the building. But I mean, it's an old building. It's what can you say? Yeah, there's some rodent droppings and things like that on the bay floors that, Kevin generally has to clean up when he's in there. Nothing in our areas upstairs or around our kitchen area yet, but they are present in the bays.
Just concerned about the health of the people and making sure that we're doing what we need to keep them safe.
Yeah, we'll see if the droppings back off, and if they do, maybe these sonic things in the spray are working. But we may need to get somebody in there to do whatever they do to get rid of them. Yeah.
Oh, is it, I know this might be ridiculous, but is it possible to get a cat or two? Have a house cat? They're good at
know.
rat control.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it might not be a bad idea. Just buy some food and have a cat roaming around.
Have a cat, yeah, why not? Anyway.
I thought Fire Hall's got dogs.
Yeah.
Well, they got ratter dogs.
Yeah. A white cat with black spots will. At least we could fake it.
Exactly. Thank you, Ian.
No problem.
Can we have a motion then to adopt the fire chief's report?
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you again. And Dan, over to you for the Public Works report.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So just try to get through this pretty quick. All the stats are fairly consistent to last month. Good news at the water treatment plant. We haven't had a single call out since February 22nd, since we replaced the valve that was malfunctioning. So that's really good. Going through about the plant's running at 8 liters a second. We can go to 14, even 16 liters per second. So we're just getting ready for the flows to bump up once the good weather gets here. There was some leaks in the system. We fixed one on McLeod Road. A corporation stop right out of the main was leaking copper pipe. So we're able to put in new pipe for that one right up to the curb stop, which is the meter nowadays. We did get a very large main break down at Emerton Road across the highway in the park. And it was, a couple thousand gallons per minute. Drained McKay Reservoir by a half in roughly 20 minutes, which
Wow.
is, it blew a big hole in the ground and
Very big hole.
very big hole. So it's a section of pipe that's right close to sea level. It's under the highest pressure in the system. It's a very thin wall asbestos cement pipe. It did blow in relatively the same area about 2 years ago. This one's about another 15 feet down the pipe. It's going to happen again. There's no question about it. It's going to happen quicker, to tell you the truth, probably. So I have put some numbers together. I talked to Gary a little bit about it this morning. You're around $80,000 to replace the section of pipe. But we're close to $4,000 every time it breaks. So we're just putting Band-Aids on it for now.
Not to mention the cost of the spilled water.
Yeah.
Not to mention the water. Yeah. So we lost 44,000 gallons in 20 minutes. So that's quite a bit. It took basically it took about 4.5 days to fill the tank that went down by half.
Oh my
So
God.
it's huge. And not to mention, the first time it broke, it was at 10 o'clock on a Saturday evening, which it wasn't a huge inconvenience for the people, but this time it broke at 11 a.m. So we had the ferry terminal, the gas station, 4 hydrants, all without water. So if you're looking for a Murphy's Law, that's the one that's going to get you. No question about it. Like I said to Gary this morning, I've been here 22 years. The fellow before me was here 20 years and not one piece of pipe has been replaced in this system. So I think you might want to put that on the next budget or whatever, because it's going to happen again. It's a very thin wall pipe. It's at 110 PSI and it's almost 60 years old. So I just want to mention there is another leak on Garvin Road that we're fixing this coming week. It's not very big, but it's under the asphalt. So it requires a boring tool and whatnot to replace that one. I would like to congratulate Sonia. She passed her level 1 water treatment plant operator certificate. So it takes a long time to get these certificates. So basically that's 1,750 hours of work in a plant. It's also basically a year's worth of schooling before you can even write the test. So, you know, operators that are level 3s and level 4s, they're basically gone to school for 4 years and have worked thousands of hours before you're even allowed to write those exams. Other than that, Keith and I both did some WHMIS upgrading. We're all up to date with our certifications, which is great. The lake level's been really steady since February. It's been a couple centimeters over the spillway. We've had mortar bikes under the gate, and they've completely destroyed the nice grass and everything on the dam. So I'm gonna have to get a welder up there and make the gate a little more impenetrable. They're just dragging their dirt bikes underneath the gate, basically. But safety's been really good up at the plant. We do our tailgate meetings, water sampling and testing, everything's been really good in the distribution system. So things are running good
Other than pipes exploding.
until something explodes. And it does. You fix one and another one goes. So
Well,
job security, I guess.
thank you for the update, Dan. Any questions for Dan?
I just wanted the replacement of the water mains is a job that has needed to be done for many, many, many years. And you're absolutely right, Danny. They will only continue, and at some point band-aiding becomes economically unviable. However, my understanding is, would we not, because it is a big project, as you said, not a single pipe has been replaced other than the Band-Aid approach since they were originally put in.
Yes.
Are we not, when I say we, the improvement district, and this is a question for anyone, maybe Gary knows, or Dan, entitled, once we convert to the regional district, to some infrastructure grants for a repiping of like a large scale,
Yeah.
a large scale.
We're definitely entitled to apply for them. But that's exactly all it is. You're just applying for the.
No, I
grant.
know, but
Yeah. So.
do we know that for certain? Because I thought it was new infrastructure and I wasn't sure whether replacing existing pipes does qualify for grants. I guess that's my question.
Yes, replacing the pipes does qualify for grants.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, but it's an application.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so you're definitely not guaranteed to get any money.
No, I understand that.
There's a
but we're
myriad of
entitled to-
there's a myriad of grant programs which the CVRD would be eligible for.
Yeah.
You know, replacement of existing infrastructure.
And I thought I saw on the conversion report that Focus did, I think it was Focus, that CVRD had a plan, like within, I think it was 20 to 25 years, they were almost complete of what they want to replace and upgrade in Union Bay. Pretty sure that was in the report.
I don't think it's been planned. I think, there's certainly an addressing of it in there that says it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, they had a pie graph in there that kind of said 0 to 5 years, it was
Yes.
certain amount of pipe, and then 10 to 15 was certain amount of pipe.
Right.
It was quite a fast track, if you ask me. So I'm really hoping we can get some money coming, that's for sure.
Yeah. For sure, I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have one question, Dan, regarding that blowout that was down at Emerson Road and on the opposite side, on the ocean side. Like you were saying, it's a very awkward spot. So if you can replace that pipe, I can imagine you're going to reroute it so
Yes.
it's easier access next time.
Yes, exactly, Ted. We would continue it just like your water line that runs up north. We would continue that one running south along the highway, a 90-degree down Buckley Bay Road, and then tie into the existing water line as it's right on the shoulder of the road.
Yeah, right. Rather than going into that park area.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, the construction costs were 67,000, and then about 10,000 for engineering. So it's a relatively short piece of pipe. However, being right on the highway and there is a creek there that we have to go over the culvert. It's an expensive job.
Right.
But I think it's really one that of all the places that we have AC, I've only had maybe 5 or 6 AC failure pipes like that in 22 years. So this one's done it twice in the last 2 years.
Yeah, 4 feet apart.
Yeah, well, a little more than that. It's about 10 feet apart. Yeah.
Okay.
So, we've had one right downtown Union Bay. We've had one on Mr. Beach, one on Walker, a couple in Kilmarnock, and that's it for actual AC failing pipe. So with this one being 2 in 2 years, it's going to be 6 months next time.
Mr. Chairman, just one final comment on this. I think if there is a bit of a silver lining here, I mentioned the talks we're having with the CVRD on some joint water master planning. They certainly are looking at using Coors Engineering as the consultants to do that work. So, which means that, Kendall, our engineering consultants are obviously through communications with Dan, very aware of these infrastructure leak issues. So CVRD and ourselves would be engaging the consultants that have firsthand knowledge of this.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so we'll leave this particular stretch of pipe to Dan and to Gary to bring forward any capital requests that might be required.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Dan? Okay, motion to adopt Dan's report.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so back to the agenda. New business, replacement of firefighter turnout gear. There's a report from the fire chief attached to the board package. I will turn this over to Chief Ham and Gary to walk us through this.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's I put it under new business, but in a way it's not. My understanding is that last February, there was a discussion about 18 sets of firefighter turnout gear needed to be replaced. And basically there was talk about a strategy of, replacing six sets a year over a 3-year time period, 2020, 21, and 22. The report from the chief is here. He'll answer any questions you may have. But essentially what we're looking for now is just authority to proceed with the 6 sets. Total cost per ensemble would be $3,115. At this time, there is an urgent need to acquire 6 complete turnout sets at a costing of $18,690 plus tax and shipping, and the source of funds would be the fire capital.
Okay. Questions?
Regarding this turnout gear, I think the reasons for this too is there is a timeline. Is that not right, Ian, on this gear? It has to be changed every
10 years.
within a time.
Yeah, every 10 years. It's unfortunate because it's a mandate by the NFPA that it has to be done. A couple of years ago, they tried to do this thing where you could send gear that had expired in and get it recertified, but NFPA got a hold of that and they put a stop to it. So unfortunately, like a full-time fire department, the same rules apply to us as Vancouver. So, 10 years of Vancouver gear, they're gonna need
Is
to
it
be
a lot?
replaced. Yeah, that's a lot. Like our gear gets replaced in 10 years and it's still pretty serviceable, but it doesn't matter. It's the law. So we're kind of stuck in that, and we have those 18 sets. Granted, once they're replaced, we got 10 years of a reprieve, but that's just the way it is. The rules are the rules, and we can't circumvent them. So it's
Right.
unfortunate.
Thanks.
Eve, Susanna?
No comment. Thank
You
you.
have to pretty much, well, I get it. I
Yeah.
think we have to do it.
Is there a bylaw, a capital expenditure bylaw required here?
There would be, right, Janice? Yes.
Yes,
So that would come to the next meeting then?
correct.
Do you need anything from us now, Gary? Do you
Mr.
need,
Chairman, just a motion to approve the purchase in the amounts as indicated in the chief's report. And then we'll prepare the bylaw and put it on the next agenda.
okay,
So moved.
Second,
all in
Aye, aye.
favor?
Yeah.
favor.
Aye, aye. Okay. Second bit of unfinished business, I think we've covered, have we not, the strategic priorities?
Oh, Gary, you're muted.
Mr. Chairman, item 5B, the proposed minor change of date.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've skipped, you're right, I have skipped down one, I apologize. Proposed change of UBIT annual meeting date, yes, I will turn this to you to describe why.
Mr. Chairman, I put this on the agenda because what I'm recommending is a slight change in the date to the AGM, basically push it back a week. The reason for that is the audit. This will be the first year in a couple of years where we'll have the AGM in April before May 1st, which is required under the letters patent. But Janice and the auditor feel that, having the AGM on the 22nd would necessitate the financial statements being presented to the board 1 week prior, which is going to be really, really tight. So what we're proposing is we would have the financial statements presented to the board on April the 22nd, which would have been the AGM date, and then
Right.
push the AGM back 1 week to April 29th. So that's really the first part. And it would still be totally in compliance with the letters patent. I've talked to the ministry about this. If you were to approve it, they don't have a concern. Second point, though, is the AGM. Last year you had it in, I believe it was September, and it was in person. And you could certainly do that again this year. There is a provision that if we were just going to do it by Zoom, nothing in person, it would have to be, we'd have to do an amendment to our procedure bylaw. Now, I didn't get a chance to check the procedure bylaw, whether that has been done, but
It has not.
if we were just going to go Zoom, I'd have to make a minor change to the procedure bylaw. It doesn't need approval from the ministry. It just needs to be filed with them. So I think two things I need direction from the board on. Are you okay with pushing the AGM back a week to April 29th? We would update the schedule on the website. And secondly, are we going to go do what we did last year, which is a combination of in-person and Zoom, I guess? Or are we just going to go Zoom? Now, I haven't spoken to Janice about this. The COVID protocols haven't really changed. And I don't think they will change between now and April. So if we were going to go basically do what we did last year, I think it would have to be, Janice, jump in. It would have to be essentially the same kind of setup we had last
Yeah,
year.
Gary, we didn't Zoom. It was live streamed
It
through
was
you.
live stream.
So it was a bigger deal. It was very good, but it cost $600
Yeah.
because it's a lot of equipment involved. So yeah, definitely not Zoom. It was live streamed. So
So the question is do we want to have a virtual only AGM, which would be our last AGM as the improvement district as well? And you know, our debates in the past have been that when we do something virtual only, we exclude a portion of our population who are not as computer literate as the rest. And so that's the first decision. Virtual only or a combined live stream, limited live attendance?
My personal feeling is to go with the live, the combination, what you just said, where there's a option, because it, as you pointed out, it's our last ever meeting essentially of Union Bay Improvement District. Vaccinations will be more on board. I think, you know, we're used to it now. We know how to do it. That way we would not have to amend our bylaw, if I understand correctly. So I'm in favor of that.
Ted, Eve?
Yeah, I agree on the live stream. I'm going for my vaccine April 1st. Already registered to go and along with my wife. And sounds like it's starting to pick up steam for even younger people within the next 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Eve?
You're muted. You're muted, Eve.
Yeah, anything you want is fine with me. I'm not really, don't have an opinion.
Okay. So should we deal with this then? I don't know if we need a motion or a vote or anything like this. I think we just say we proceed with the meeting as a combined in-person live stream meeting. Same thing as last year where we encourage people to stay home and watch it on the live stream and send their questions in and then have a registration so we know numbers of people that attend in person. That's what we did last year, right, Janice?
yes.
Janice, my apologies. I didn't overlook mentioning this to you. Any issues, if that's the way the board wants to go, basically what we did last year, any issues of concern
Well,
outside of the cost?
I'm emailing the company right now to make sure he's available because we're very limited in the valley as to who can do it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And that would also require Graham to be in attendance as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Gary, what was the date again? We moved it to,
April 29th.
got it.
Do we not need to move, actually vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, before we do that, I think there's one small consideration here that I mentioned earlier, which is if the letters patent or the OIC changes our number of trustees to 3 as of our current date of April 22nd, that basically, Ted, your term would end then, right?
I thought it would be at the AGM.
The problem being is we would then have 4 trustees when we're only allowed 3.
Is that a problem?
Well, that's why I asked, are we allowed 4? And, you know, I would never exclude you from the AGM. It would be more of a, you know, who votes on anything that happens at the AGM in terms of, you know, trustee remuneration, accepting financial statements, all that, right? You would certainly be involved in that last meeting at the, on the 22nd, but I think that this is just a procedural thing that, Gary, I don't know if I'm making a mountain out of a molehill here or not, but it sounds like we would have a little bit of a glitch.
Well, you're having an annual general meeting, you changed it to the 29th. So before that, supposedly it was going to be the 22nd.
Right.
So there's the thing, is all you've done is change the date. It's still an AGM.
Your point, Mr. Chair, was that on the 22nd, my understanding is the OIC is, and I can confirm this with Catherine, is saying that as of the 22nd, we have 3 trustees and have permission to carry on with 3 until conversion. Your concern is that on the 22nd, we'd have 4 trustees when,
On the 20th, yeah, we would still have 4 trustees.
Yeah.
Because Ted's terms have normally expired at the AGM.
right. Okay, well, let me just, I think it's a minor issue. I don't think it's an issue, but I'll just run that by Catherine. I don't like surprises. So-
My recollection was that the term actually runs out April 30th, kind of like to allow the AGM to be scheduled up to May 1st.
We'd have to look at our elections policy there to see what it says.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm in favor of postponing it by a week. It makes sense in terms of the audit and the financial information. That's really what the landowners are wanting to hear about, is accurate financial information. So it makes complete sense to do that.
Yeah, you want to have a good presentation from the audit
Yeah.
the week prior so that you're comfortable and before
Yep.
they go to the AGM. Yeah. Okay, I'll confirm this with Catherine. I don't think there's going to be an issue.
The other thing I would suggest is that we probably do not have a board meeting scheduled. It's probably not on the schedule.
For April?
Yeah, we usually have an AGM only, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's,
Mr. Chairman, now that you raised that, given we're getting really close to conversion, I think the last, if you look at the schedule, it says April 1st for a committee of the whole. I would suggest maybe we just plan to schedule a board meeting for the 15th.
Whichever 15th or the 22nd, whichever day you need to do it, right? For the audit.
I was actually thinking both.
Yeah.
That you have a board meeting on the 15th. And then the one on the 22nd would be just for the purposes of receiving the financial statements and getting your briefing and answering questions. And then the 29th would be the AGM.
yeah.
Something tells me that we just may need to meet that frequently once we get into
Yes.
April.
And we need to, because of the AGM, we do need to post this information further in advance of our regular board meetings. It's more than just the 2 weeks notice.
I think it's
That's
28
another-
days. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 28 days. So we do need to make this decision today about those dates, about meeting as a cow or a board meeting on the 22nd and then the AGM on the 29th. I think,
Okay, so is that what we're
just
voting
so
on
that
here?
it can be announced. Sorry.
So I guess we have 2 motions, right? One is to schedule a board meeting, or sorry, to reschedule the AGM from April 22nd to April 29th.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
second for that. Do we need any more discussion about it? I'd say with the proviso that we have to figure out Ted's standing at that meeting, that's all. So all in favor?
I,
I guess, and then do we want a motion then to schedule a board meeting for April 15th, a regular public board meeting for April 15th, and a public board meeting for the review of financial statements on April 22nd, 2:30 in the afternoon, virtual meetings.
Okay.
So that's the motion.
Second.
Second.
Yeah, motion.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
What time's the AGM on the 29th? Did we know? What
It's
time?
usually in the evening, right?
Yeah.
7 PM. or something.
7 PM.
Okay. So on to unfinished business now. So it seems to me that for both 6A and 6B, which are review of conversion process and review of the board's 2021 strategic priorities, we covered that off in the
We did.
interim administrator's report. So if there's no other thoughts or questions there, we'll just move past. Which brings us basically to the end of the agenda, save for landowner questions. And I do believe we still have one or two landowners. One, I think, landowner on the line. That's Mary. If she has any questions, I'd love to entertain them now.
Yes, unfortunately, I have quite a few questions, so I'll try to do them quickly. Two of the items cover, when I hear you speaking about what happened with the railway and also what happened with the subdivision bylaw. And when I hear these things, I think, where are your files? Kevin Duval kept excellent files. And from what I've heard you say and Gary respond to about questions is that the lawyer managed to find something. The information that I sent you about the railway in there, I'm sure it said, Kevin had said that they were going to look at a new agreement or something, but I never saw anything after that. And so I'm just wondering, what state are the files in? Do you know what happened? Oh no. Sorry, that's my birds. That's my question. I'm gonna put you on mute.
It's louder than my dog barking. I'm going to turn this to Janice and Gary because it's a question of administrative record keeping. And just to provide Mary the best answer you can.
Well, I would say that those files are now up at the Aquatic Center.
Because of the timing.
Yes.
Yep. And previous to that, one of the disadvantages of doing everything virtually is, I'm not there. I don't have a physical presence to actually go through all of the files to try to retrieve that type of information. I can't say conclusively that somewhere in one of those files, there may sit that legal opinion, which the lawyers retrieve from their files quite quickly. The subdivision bylaw, again, same thing applies, right? That we're going back 3 or 4 years now. So again, on a lot of this work, because of COVID and not being in the office, you can't just stand up and go into the filing cabinet and try to retrieve all that information. But the subdivision bylaw, I haven't been into that exercise of analysis in terms of what's in the subdivision bylaw in 2016, comparing that to all of the other bylaws that were supposedly supposed to be repealed. That's a planning exercise, which, we have not done at this stage.
But I do recall having access to that bylaw. I have read that bylaw. It is accessible to us in our documents, and we have shared it amongst the board so that we could review it. I've read it anyways. I don't know if all the board members have seen it.
Yeah, I read it.
Yes, it was circulated
Yeah.
to all of them.
Well, plus I sent you that FOI showing that the developer was the one that sabotaged that bylaw. Maybe the best thing to do would be to ask him what he objects to, and then you could take that out and it would go sailing through.
And I do believe that as a result of that objection, that the bylaw was revisited with the lawyers and there was guidance given as to how to adjust it.
Yeah. Can I go to my next question?
You may. Thank you.
Okay, the size of the building, is there a reason that it's 12 by 36? Or is that so that you can legally fit it on the water treatment property?
Dan,
Dan,
Dan, do you mind answering it?
Yeah, good question. The way this all started out was the trustees told me basically to look into an ATCO type trailer. So something like what they use at the schools and something that would be, relatively inexpensive and easy to move in basically. So
Okay.
that's those type of dimensions.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought.
Yeah,
So in other words, if you're gonna build that size, you could, if you built a square, it would be more functional. But anyways,
Yeah.
also, when you're talking about these buildings, have you looked to see where you can legally build on the water treatment plant property?
yes.
Because like the configuration is important when you're talking about putting it on the land, right?
Yeah, basically the permit from CBRD, you have to have required setbacks from certain
Yes.
things. So as long as it fits all within that, then yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
the zoning is in place. There's no conflict with the zoning.
Right, thank you.
Could
Also,
I just interject a comment with regards to process? I just want to be clear because I'm the only one on the board left during this time period. There was no formal board decision when the water superintendent says that the trustees wanted you to look at a portable. That was not ever a board decision. I just want to say that. I'm not disputing that that was what you were told, but it was never a motion that was ever discussed fully by the board. And, I'm really glad that we're doing things differently now with this new board, because those are decisions that really should have come to the board, so that back then the discussion would have quite logically take place of why aren't we looking at building, and you know what I mean? I think it would have been addressed much sooner. So that's just the history. Thank you.
okay, and if I can follow up on that, I recall it was in November, I believe, that the reason that you were told that Danny had looked at a mobile, a thing, and it was cheaper. That's where it came in, the $90,000. That's when you guys started discussing the difference between getting a prefab type thing or build. Anyways, my next question. In the email that McMahon sent the board in July 2012, where he said the operations building will also need to have an office and a restroom. Well, we know that didn't happen. He also said there will need to be a separate storage facility for chemicals, spare parts, and equipment, and room to move around, and a security fence and gate. Is there a building that he describes?
The storage for the chemicals are in the plant itself.
So there isn't a separate storage facility?
No.
Oh,
Is there a need for one, Danny? Is there a need for a separate storage facility?
Well, basically, yeah, yes, there is. And that's kind of the point of the office. We have parts and pieces. They have to go somewhere. We have, lots of equipment that we use to fix leaks and to do our job. So yeah, right now we're just cramming it into the treatment plant because we know we're going to get kicked out of here pretty soon. So yeah, whatever office we decide to put in there, it should be big enough to handle some storage, definitely.
Well,
Oh.
I would just like to
Susanna,
add that.
I was just trying to clarify what Dan said there, right? Is that the storage gets split, that there'd be chemicals stored in the plant, and the challenge right now is where he stores the components for essentially the distribution system.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I agree.
Susanna, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what I want to point out is my vision is that we need a properly built, and I think building it is the way to go, washroom office. But in terms of chemical storage, equipment storage, a Quinsam hut, for example, is a much cheaper way to build that kind of storage. I don't think you need a brick foundation, walls, drywall for just storage. Do
Yeah,
you get what
the
I'm saying?
Yeah, the chemicals actually have their own rooms at the plant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm
we're-
saying that
yeah.
is that I don't know that we need to build into that office washroom a storage area, a fancy schmancy storage area.
No,
'Cause that could
I
be-
totally agree. Yeah, no, I'm just talking, everything that we have here has to go somewhere. Right now.
Yeah, for sure.
We have no room to put any of this stuff at the plant.
Let's
Yeah.
not debate the
Yeah.
construction again of the building right now. We went through that earlier.
Yeah.
But it will come back to the board for approval as to saying, here's the design, here's the cost. And here's the method, whether it's build or buy.
Okay, so what was the answer? Does it?
So Mary, the answer is the design right now is that chemicals are stored in the plant and that storage will be built for parts with, and it'll be, I guess, determined as to whether that is within the office complex
Okay, gotcha.
or in a separate storage building.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, hopefully this is my last question. About the bead properties, parcels. Is there not a legal description at all on those properties, like a PID number or roll number?
Yes, there is a PID, but that does not give you an address. You would have to do a latitude longitude thing.
No, but if you put that into BC assessment, if you put you can search by address or PID roll number, and it brings up the property with it highlighted on a map.
Yeah, and we do have them highlighted on maps. Danny has those maps. So we can look at the properties.
And so I guess the question then, and can we then not determine whether it is affronted by a water line?
Yes, thank you.
Danny?
If, like I say, so right now I'm dealing with, this is what the information I have. I have a roll number, which is just a set of about 10 numbers and a
Yeah.
name.
And
Okay,
what the suggestion is can someone mark that on a map? Because you can go in with the PID into the BC assessment site. It will show it where it is on a map and we can say, this is a B property
because
with
they're
PID
paying,
number.
they're
So
paying
you want-
property taxes.
Pardon?
They're all paying, they're paying property taxes. It'll show up.
So I guess we need to know whether the board wants Lindsay to take the time to get the PIDs for each one and put them into BC assessment to get the information to get to Danny.
Yeah.
Well,
The board would have to instruct us.
and I'll,
Anyways, that's
Can I go
the end of my questions. Thank you.
and I go back to the point that I made earlier, though, that I'm not recommending that we abandon this file. And I'm not recommending that we just zero down exclusively to, those 10, 15 properties that, on the surface appear to be prime candidates for adding to the tax roll. I'd like to, as I said earlier, have a discussion with the solicitor, because I have been down this road before in terms of, what's the criteria for determining who's eligible or benefiting from a water line. It's easy. Yeah, Dan could say, yeah, this somewhere along the line, we're not exactly sure where this property is, but it fronts a water line. Therefore, it's eligible or it benefits from, it's capable of connection, it's benefiting, we put it on the tax roll. I would want to have that discussion with the solicitor in regards to what degree of detail he would need to feel comfortable if we're going to go that route and put those properties on the tax roll. So, I'd want to talk to him about, look, here's the role. Here's what we have in terms of information without going to that next step of, are you comfortable with us going ahead on the basis of what we know with adding these parcels onto the tax roll? So, you know, I take the point. I just don't know the answer to that question. I know what lawyers typically in the past have advised me, that they like to see a legal description and they like to see a number and a street address before we. Go.
Sorry, I was talking about the 80 some odd.
Yeah.
Like I wish you'd let me do it, right? And look them all up for you, you know?
I'd
I
vote for
know, I
that.
know.
I vote for that. Free labor. Yeah. Thanks, Mary.
It
Why
is
not?
public information.
But I understand you can't do it now. I agree. I wasn't talking about that, yes, you should go ahead. I'm just saying that that would be to me, that's the fastest way to identify it. If you got the PID number, you know, the BC assessment, that's a great website.
And this again comes back to, if there are a significant number of properties, this is of significant advantage to existing parcel taxpayers, because we get to spread the load.
Yeah.
Or we get to choose to leave parcel taxes the same way they are and more quickly pay down our debt.
I think
So
it's even a
I
bigger
think-
issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should revisit this in after the audit and say, is
Yeah.
there more work we want to do on this file? But right now we're getting through the audit.
Thank you very much.
And that's what I'm
Thank you.
suggesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions?
No, I'm very happy. Sorry about my birds. I had to bring the one out and he's sitting with me now because he gets the other one going and then tells him to shut up.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary. And thank you, everybody else. So I guess that brings us to essentially the end of our agenda. There's a notice of next regular board meeting will be held on April 15th, as we just have agreed. So
Wow.
that's it. Notice.
I just
to- What?
well, I just sort of realized, yeah, that's next month.
Yeah.
Like, holy moly.
That's right.
Sorry. Little delay there.
All right. So motion to adjourn the meeting.
So
So
moved.
moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
you,
Thanks for a great
everybody.
meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.